Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. Today, I'm going to be talking about some collection and collector issues. I'm coming up on kind of a goofy milestone in my own collection, but I'll get to that a little bit later. It wasn't something that was big enough to make a video about on its own, but a couple of topics have popped up in other people's videos recently that kind of dovetail with this thing that I'm approaching in my own collection. So thought I'd just bundle it all together and make a video out of it. The first topic that is part of this conversation came up through the nosolution channel. That's Scott's channel, where he's got a lot of cool stuff that he covers. And it was also followed up on by Aaron, the metal theologian, on his channel. And it's the idea of whether or not people in the VCLT on YouTube are just show-offs. That they're just trying to, flex and hold up records and basically say, nah, 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 look at the cool thing I have that you don't. Apparently, Scott saw this pop up in a Reddit thread because nothing toxic ever happens on Reddit threads. But yeah, he had a commentary on it, and Aaron has too. And it's an interesting topic to me because I'm very touchy about the accusations of being a show off. A big part of this is simply my upbringing and where I was raised. Growing up in rural Appalachia, actually, one of the character traits assigned to that population demographic is that they are not very showy people. That they tend to be a little more low key and, for lack of a better term, humble when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I can very much attest to that. Showing off is something that is not looked upon favorably in that culture. And growing up, that was something that was, definitely kind of imbued into me. My dad, as a record collector, was never showy about his stuff. And I'd ask him about it because, you're a kid and your parents have something cool. You think everybody should know about it. And I was always sort of like, no, they don't need to know what I've got. I don't need to show them what I own. That's stupid. Why would I do that? So, yeah, the same kind of translates with me. It was one of the big reasons I was kind of resistant to the idea of starting a YouTube channel in the first place. During the pandemic, when I got to watching videos from other people, some of them were encouraging me, hey, you should do your own channel. I was like, I don't know if I want to go there. And one of my big hesitations was that I don't ever want to be perceived as, oh, I'm doing this just to show off a bunch of records I own. That would sit very poorly with me and still does. I, of course, did start the YouTube channel, but for me, the point is never just to try to flex or show off rare records or show off expensive records or any of that kind of crap. The reason I ultimately decided to do a YouTube channel and show records and play clips is so people can find out about records they don't already know about. There's way too much heavy metal for any one person to be familiar with all of it. We all like to go out looking in used stores and record shows and, Goodwill and stuff like that. And you find records that you're simply not familiar with. Well, what do you do then? You either have to, blind buy it, hope it's good. That can be fun. That can also bite you in the ass a lot of the times. And, when you're trying to work on a budget, that's a tough thing to do sometimes. Your second option is to try to quickly, look it up on YouTube while you're standing in the middle of the store and try to get a sense of what it sounds like before you buy it. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. YouTube's got a ton of stuff on it, but it doesn't have every record out there. And it can also be kind of hard to just stand there for, a minute or two, play a few clips, and get a good impression of what an album's going to be like. And your third option is just to not buy it. And then you still don't know what it is or whether it was any good. And sometimes that comes back to haunt you too, because you find out later, I was like, oh, that was a really good record. Oh, that record was worth $200 and I could have bought it for $2. That stinks also. So that was one of the big reasons I decided, yeah, I have a lot of weird records that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Let me talk about them a little bit. Let me add some clips so that people get a sense of what they sound like. And then if other people find them in the wild, they can make an informed decision about what to do. They can think, oh, I remember that record. That's actually pretty rare because I saw it in that video. I'll go ahead and buy that. I can either sell it and make some money, or I can trade it to somebody for a record I would rather have. That's great. You can also remember if you liked the clips, like, oh, that sounded really, really great. Yes, I'd love to buy that. For example, just this past weekend, which was in the middle of November 2023, a bunch of, obscure US heavy metal singles were sold on eBay. Most of them brought like $20 or so. There were a couple that got to 40. Some of them, were less than 20. So for people that have watched, videos I've done on that, hey, I hope you saw those auctions and were able to get some of those because yeah, some of them went for, really good prices. For me, that's kind of, the point of making videos and talking about records and showing records. It's not trying to claim my collection's cooler than your collection or ha ha ha, I have this and you don't. That's bullshit. I'm not the least bit interested in that crap. It's just, hey, here's a chance to discover some more heavy metal that you may not have had a chance to before because I collected and picked up a lot of weird stuff over the years and maybe you'll find it someday. And if you want it, great. And if you don't, that's fine too. So that's my take on the whole show off thing. Are there people who do that, who just want to show off their stuff and flex and make a big stink like, they're the greatest thing ever? Sure. I have no interest in that. I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to interact with that. That's not really the point. Aaron makes good points about the topic in his video as well. Yes, sometimes it is, just kind of fun to like, hey, here is one of my, really prized, rare albums. But again, I'm not coming at it from the standpoint of, this is the prized rare record I have and you don't and you never will. It's just like, hey, here's a cool thing I've got. Let's discuss it. Let's play a few clips and let you hear what it's like. So that's my take on that. The second thing that came up, and this was in Aaron's video, was the idea of, who has the best metal collection? And Aaron, having some fun with it, titled his video, I have the best collection. And I noticed a week or so before that, somebody, I think it was a viewer from Greece, had left a comment in one of Aaron's videos saying, you have the best collection on YouTube. So and Aaron may have taken the idea and run with it a bit. But Aaron's whole point is that everybody should think their own collection is the best collection because you should be building the collection the way you want to. I'll say right up front, I do not think my collection is the best heavy metal collection out there, not by a long shot. And the problem you run into here is, what do you mean by the word best? Best is a terribly loaded term. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's very easy to take out of context. I teach some technical writing and public speaking to college seniors. Best is actually one of the words I single out that they should almost never use. There's almost never a good situation to use that word in. And I give them lots of examples where, a lot of times this word is actually just going to get you in trouble, especially with public speaking. It's almost like you're broadcasting a challenge for somebody to come up with a better example of whatever it is you're discussing. You said it was the best. Someone in your audience is going to think it's not the best, and I can challenge you with something that would be better than that. It's a very tricky term to use. But yeah, to Aaron's point, the best collection should be your own personal ideal collection. What is it that you want? Which does make a lot of sense. Why do I say my collection is not the best? Well, in conventional use of the term, a lot of people would think best might mean largest collection. And I certainly don't have the largest record collection. I probably have one of the smallest record collections of folks on YouTube. And that's fine. I don't care. I'm not interested in bulk volume records. I also certainly don't have the most expensive collection. There are a lot of people whose collection is worth a lot more in terms of monetary value than mine. And that's fine. Do I have some expensive records? Yes. Do I have a ton of them? Not really. A lot of my records are kind of average price, I would guess. My collection is also not the best in terms of owning the most grail items or owning, all the top 10 rarest or most desirable metal vinyl LPs. No, I don't. A lot of those things are way out of my price range. I might have one or two of them at most that I just got lucky and picked up a long time ago, but no, I don't have, every, $1,000 private pressing from the 80s. I don't have all the original, Japanese Iron Maiden pressings or anything like that. No, in none of those regards is my collection the best. Is my collection the best in terms of my own perception? I don't know. I guess it's getting there. Coming back around, to Aaron's definition, I did make a conscious decision around 2009 or so that I wanted to change the way I built my collection. Up to that point, I kind of bought whatever I could scrabble together, working on a relatively limited budget. What could I find used? What could I find cheap? What could I afford to order through eBay? What could I afford to bid and win? Yeah, and what I was able to get, from some private sale lists when vendors did it that way back in the pre-eBay days. And I had, a nice collection by my own standards at that point, but it also filled up with a lot of junk, a lot of, very mundane stuff that never got played. Condition wasn't great. This album's got a cut corners, missing its inserts. It's very scratched. Yeah, it's a playable copy, but it didn't have anything going for it beyond that, and I don't even play it. So why do I have it? So I did thin out a lot of stuff around that time. Some of it I probably shouldn't have. Some of it I've gone back and rebought since then. But I did decide around that time that I really wanted to focus on, having not a huge collection, but at least a nice collection. And for me, that meant getting the records I really enjoyed. I had gotten a ton of stuff through tape trading and CDR trading over the years, and a lot of them were fantastic albums, but I had never owned a physical copy of it. And so my kind of shift was towards, let's pick up the records I like. If it's a rare one, okay, it's going to take some time. If it's an expensive one, okay, it may cost a little bit. If it's neither rare nor expensive, okay, great. The next time I see it, I should go ahead and pick it up and have a real copy on the shelf instead of, just an old cassette or, CDR copy. So that's how I started approaching collecting from that point, and have kind of built my collection since. Do I still blind buy and impulse buy things sometimes? Yes, I do, especially if I find something in the wild and it's like, oh, that looks interesting. Yeah, sure, let's give it a chance. If I can afford to do so, it's not too expensive. I would still do that sometimes. But in terms of the stuff that kind of stays on the shelves long term, they're the records I personally like, whether it's rare or not, whether it's expensive or not, whether it's obscure or not, doesn't matter. If I like a record enough, I'll get a physical copy and keep it on the shelf. For a lot of other stuff that's like, well, this is okay, but it's maybe not blowing me away. A lot of that kind of stuff, I'll end up just make a digital copy of it, save it on the hard drive for those times when I do want to hear it, but then the original copy can move on. Some of those go to, trades, record stores, VCLT, whatever. So that's kind of my approach on, the best record collection. Mine is not the best by any definition that most people would apply, but as Aaron would define it, yes, my collection is, it's the best it can be so far. I'm still working to improve it. There's still things I would really like to own that I don't yet. Some of them I'll be able to track down one day, I think. Some of them I may not. There are some things that are just a little too rare and a little too expensive for me to ever own, and that'll be okay too. A lot of people, say a big part of the fun of collecting is never getting everything, always having something else to look for and chase down. That if you ever got every single record you wanted, that it might take a lot of the fun out of it. I don't know if I've ever really subscribed to that. And I'm somebody who's like, okay, if I've got a list, the point is to try to complete the list. But I think more to the point is it's not just, completing the list is nice, but there'll always be new stuff that gets added to the list that you find out about later on. Excuse me. There's records that someday I'm going to really, really want that I don't even know they exist right now. Okay, so that kind of covers those two topics. Now on to this deal, what's happening with my own collection. Well, I noticed recently that I am rapidly coming up upon getting my 5,000th record into my collection. This is a lot bigger than my collection has ever been in the past. Years ago, kind of the early 2010s, I think it had gotten into the very low 4,000s. I kind of crossed the 4,000 threshold just barely. But pretty soon after that, I did a major sell-off. It kind of felt like the collection was a little big at the time, but more to the point, just in terms of stuff going on with family, moving, changes. We needed to free up space. And it's like, okay, I need to literally just clear out like in 2 or 3 entire shelves worth of CDs. So a lot of hundreds of things got sold or traded off around that time. And then for several years in the 2010s, it didn't pick up nearly as much stuff. In the last 5 years or so, back to about 2018 or so, I've kind of picked things back up. And was checking recently, like, holy moly, it's almost 5,000 titles here, the way I'm counting. So that is rapidly approaching. And how do I know that I'm almost at exactly 5,000? Well, that's the other thing that I was originally going to sort of build this video around. I thought I'd show folks how I manage my collection. I actually do not use Discogs, which I think a lot of people do. Nothing wrong with using Discogs. If that's where you've entered information about your records and kind of keep track of your collection, that's fine. It's a great website. There's a lot of nice tools on Discogs. I haven't done that just first because I didn't really start using Discogs heavily until my collection was already very massive. It would be a real chore to try to build it on Discogs at this point. But there's actually a bigger reason, besides just the workload, that I don't use Discogs for my collection management. It's because Discogs is a platform I have no control over. If Discogs, goes under one day, or they decide to stop letting people house their collection information one day, or they start charging a fee to use those kind of features one day, there's nothing I can do about that. And I don't like the idea of having that much work and effort put into something that's very important to me, like my collection, and then just some asshole executive one day being like, well, our investors and our stock dividend splits say that we hit the big delete button and so long and thanks for all the fish, and then I've got access to jack fuck all. I want to have that kind of information under my own control, with the document where I can use it and keep track of it, and it's on me to deal with it, not hoping some company takes it away from me someday. My understanding is this burned a lot of people somewhere around 2016 or 2017 with their Google Music collection, that people were keeping a lot of their music backed up and stored on some kind of Google system. It was a Google Play system. I never used it. I wasn't aware of it even at the time. But then one day Google just announced, hey, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. Took it offline, and then people couldn't use it anymore. I don't think they lost their music collection or anything like that, but they lost a very easy way to access and play their music collection. That's exactly the kind of thing I don't ever want to deal with. So what I've done instead is I just have my collection built into an Excel spreadsheet. I'll share the spreadsheet here. Let me swap over to a share screen view. This is going to be very nerdy and way, way too anal for some people. And that's okay. You certainly don't have to do what I did. But I'll show it so people can just get a sense of how I kind of manage my collection. It does come in handy for a lot of little things. Let's see, we want to share screen. So here we go. This spreadsheet is my collection. I started building this spreadsheet in 2004. I'd gotten a new laptop at the time, and just one of the projects I wanted to work on was getting a handle on my collection. Back then, I was still doing a lot of CDR trading, and that was one of the big reasons or drivers for building this spreadsheet, because you always needed to be able to send people a list of what you had available for trade. And I had learned, keeping that in like, a Word document or something was a lot to keep updated. I didn't like the formatting as much on it. And so I was like, I need, a list I can easily send to people. But a lot of times people only wanted certain information off the list. They didn't want me to send them a list of, at the time, what was probably 2,000 to 3,000 records. A lot of times people wanted to see, I just want to see your new wave of British heavy metal stuff, or I'm only interested in your death metal demos. It's like, okay, that was a real pain to manage all that until I started putting everything into a spreadsheet and using the filters. To be clear, even 20 years ago when I started building this was a project that took months to get built. This wasn't something where I could sit down and do it all in a weekend. It took literal months to get the original version of this spreadsheet built, and it's gone through several iterations since then, but I've always kept it updated since. So what we've got here, columns of information that I can sort by. Starting on the left and working to the right, the first column is, country. What country is the band from? This comes in very handy nowadays for things like heavy metallurgy shows. If we want to talk about, bands from Italy or bands from Europe, you can go in here and, of course, with filters on, if you're not familiar with Excel, you can then click and choose just which ones you want to see and which ones you don't want to see. And that way I can very quickly see what I've got in my collection that I could pull for a particular video or a particular live stream. So yeah, having your country is a big help. Band name, of course, is the next column. Probably need that information in your collection list. Album title is next. Grade, this is just, my own personal perception of how much I like the record. I just use, kind of, an A+ to F kind of, typical grading scale used in American school systems. This is, of course, completely subjective, but again, it comes in very handy when I'm trying to do things like, top 10 albums from 2013. Well, I can just look here pretty quickly, choose all the A+ and A's and A-, and that's going to give me, it lets me zero in very quickly on which material I want to discuss and feature for that particular video. Year, obviously very helpful to have this, because again, you can just sort and see when we do our videos, like, this year in metal, 2021. Okay, I can just filter right here. It's like, get rid of, don't show me all, just show me 2021. Then I can see what came out in 2021 that I've got. Format. This doesn't come up as often, but just whether it was a single, album, EP, bootlegs, basic stuff like that. Genre, again, black metal, death metal, thrash metal, power metal, traditional metal, have most of those covered here. Some bands, of course, are hard to shove into a genre. Some of the genre labels are kind of lumped together in funny ways, but it lets me quickly filter through. If somebody's only wanting to see new wave of British heavy metal, okay, here's the new wave of British heavy metal list. It was something that's kind of funny in this regard is that nowadays, of course, nobody trades CDRs or cassettes anymore. Well, I'm sure some people still do, but it's actually pretty rare. And again, a big reason I built this list was to make it easier to trade with people. Now I don't trade anymore, but it comes in very helpful for doing videos and live streams. Format. This is the format I own it on, which of course is not always the same. So a lot of things, if I just have it digital, which a ton of my collection is just digital, it will just say MP3 here instead of 7 for 7-inch single or CD or LP. Got. This tells me when I got the album. This column is incomplete because before I started the spreadsheet, I don't remember the exact date when I got this thing back in the 90s. So there's a lot of question marks that get left in that column. But everything for the past 20 years, I'll just note the month and year that I bought it. A bit anal retentive, yes. I've found that it does come in handy, though. Again, when you're trying to look at things like, how much did I buy last month? How much did I pick up? And sometimes your term is like, geez, when did I get that record? Okay, well, I do have that information for a lot of the collection. Not all of it, but a lot. Condition. This is a column I'm actually currently working on trying to update and make sure all the conditions are accurate with a grading scale. Again, if it's MP3, just, does it play fine or does it have sound issues? But yeah, for physical media, there's our VG, near mint, stuff like that. Not a column I have to use very often, but when somebody's interested in buying or trading something, it's good to have that information readily available. Price. This is an estimate of what the record is worth. MP3s, of course, are worth nothing. They're just zeros. This information is more for my family if something were to ever happen to me and they needed to try to sell these records. They have a record right here showing them at least a rough idea of what they're going to be valued at. All right, this next little column is just one for me personally to keep track of. It's kind of gives me a sense of like, how well do I know the album? If it's an album I know inside out and I can sing, every song, even if I don't play it for years, I give it a certain rating. The thing I use this for most often is just tracking new arrivals. Anything in the zero column. A zero entry means I've recently gotten it. As such, I'm not really familiar with it at all. And so, that can help me keep track of, oh yeah, I still haven't played this. I need to go back and play that. The keep column, another one. I used to use this as kind of a want list. That keep were things I was definitely keeping, but then I would list like improve or upgrade if I had a copy but it wasn't in good condition. Or it was like want list if it was an item I really wanted to go ahead and obtain. I do my want list differently now, so I really don't use that column as much. I'm very leery of ever taking columns off the spreadsheet because it's easy to delete them. It's a nightmare to try to go back and re-add them with so many records. So some of this doesn't get used as much as ever. Notes. Yeah, here I'll usually just jot down comments about the record song, favorite songs, least favorite songs, production issues, pressing issues, is an original press, repress, colored vinyl, stuff like that. Helpful collector information can help jog my memory if I don't remember exactly what it is. The digital column, again, this is one that was useful more when I was doing a lot of like CDR trading with folks, because I could see what do I actually have digital copy of, what did I not. Something that used to happen with those trades a lot is you'd ask somebody like, oh, hey, I know you said you have this record. Can you send me a copy of it? Like, oh, I only have it on vinyl and I don't have a way to, convert from vinyl to digital. It's like, oh, rats. This filter allowed me to avoid that problem because I could send somebody a list of only the early Swedish metal singles I have as digital files that I can easily put onto a CDR for you. The ones that I only have on vinyl, well, there was no point in sending those to you. Other columns over here. This column kind of keeps track of different titles. Again, sometimes people wanted to know, like, how many different albums do you have? They don't want to know that I have 6 copies of Witchfinder General's first album. They just want that counted as one. I have, Friends of Hell is an album. Death Penalty is an album. So this allows me to filter out things that I have duplicates or triplicates of, or sextuplets of in the case of Witchfinder General. Leave me alone. I'm a sick little monkey. I'm showing you a spreadsheet it took 20 years to build. I'm obviously a very sick little monkey. The next column was for splits because this allows me to process out like physical items on the shelf. It's like, how many physical pieces of vinyl do I have? Well, splits, I'll have 2 rows listed. So I'll have a row for one side and a row for the other side. But with this column, I can filter those out because that's only one physical item that's on the shelf. Again, not something I use very often. There's a few other columns over here off to the right, but these are just things that kind of help me keep track of maybe where I featured something in a video. That column is very incomplete and needs to be updated. And there's a column for like, when did I last listen to an album? That's been the last thing I've added most recently to the spreadsheet, so that I could start getting a sense of, how often are some of these things played? When I say I haven't played a record in years, how many years? Well, over time, if I keep that column updated, I'll be able to look at it and say, wow, I really haven't played that album in 7 years. Do I really need to own that? If I'm only playing it once every 7 years, maybe not. If somebody asks about it, it's like, well, yeah, I guess I could let that go. So that's the basics of the spreadsheet here. In terms of why these first few rows are highlighted in different colors, as something that happened a few times that became a bit of a problem for me was that when you start turning on like multiple filters, sometimes it's hard to make sure you've got them all turned off. Like if I wanted to see, let's work through a quick example. Let's say I just want to see just things from 1972 and, oops, didn't do that right, did I? You got to click the other little button. I've got kind of a split screen up here at the moment, so it's a little hard to see what I'm clicking. But yeah, let's say I want to see just titles from 1972. But let's say I wanted to see only things that I actually have, singles of. All right, so then I also have to go to that column and have it show only the singles. All right. So it boils things down for me pretty fast. The problem can be is if I don't remember to turn off all the different filters when I go back. Like I might remember to go back and turn on, let's see, yep, I need to see all the years again. All right, but see, now I'm seeing a list of every single I've got. It's like, wait, and sometimes I would miss this when I was looking for stuff to be like, wait, this doesn't look right. Where's all these albums? Like, oh crap, I've got some filters still turned on. It's like, yeah, this is only showing me the singles. So I got to remember to turn that off too. So what I ended up doing was those first 7 rows or so, I just color coded each of them with a different color, just did the visible light spectrum, aka the rainbow. And this way, whenever I come back, I can just glance there at the top, and if I see all 6 colors, I know that all the filters are turned off. I don't think there's any combination of filters I can leave on that would highlight those 6 or 7 rows and not leave some of them out. So yeah, it's a doofusy little thing just to help me make sure I've got all the filters turned off. So that's it. There are a lot of other tabs down here at the bottom. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on all this stuff. Again, a couple of years ago, I had to add a tab over here, stream notes, because when preparing for like heavy metallurgy streams or working on video ideas, I'm working on this spreadsheet to see what albums to use, but I needed a place to copy and paste that information to. So could do things like this and start working on best of lists for 2023 and thoughts on Wayfarer when I was trying to pull up comparisons for that. Other ones, some of these are not of much interest. Again, they're just things for keeping. Let's see, recommends. I don't even remember what that one is. Oh, I was keeping a list of things that other people had recommended to me. That's not one I'm good at keeping updated, sad to say. Want list tab is over here. I don't get stuff off the want list. It doesn't change much these days, so that's a tab 15 years ago was very dynamic. Now it's kind of stays pretty much the same. Trade is, just has a list of albums I'm definitely willing to trade, what's in the trade pile. But again, don't keep it updated as I could. Keys is things like, my grading scale, how I'm going to, rank things in terms of, what I like, what I don't like. But again, these are all subjective. These are just, so that I have some internal consistency myself. Bands and songs, these were, let's see, bands was where I was keeping tabs on things like, favorite bands, but also a list of currently, excuse me, currently active bands that I wanted to go back and check up on from time to time to see, do they have a new release yet? What's their schedule like? Those kinds of things. Songs was kind of the same way. I had, lists of favorite songs, lists of songs that I thought were absolutely hideous, just kind of, for fun lists, things that I can, kind of easily turn into video topics at some point. Albums, kind of the same way. I actually, for several years, kind of kept like a running, 50 favorite albums. It was something we posted on some of the old metal discussion boards back in the day. I just kind of kept my list from each year so I could compare and see how things moved around from year to year. Gone is the list of albums that I have gotten rid of over the years. This is incomplete, but yeah, it's hundreds of rows long. These are all the things I've traded, sold, had extras of, whatever. Don't have everything entered in here, but it was at least a big chunk. Sometimes I do kind of forget. Did I own a copy of that? I don't have it now. I feel like I used to own it. I can at least check here and be like, yep, okay, I did own that. I got rid of it at some point. Don't keep it updated all the time though. But yeah, most of what I do with collection management is just on this page. Is it a little clunky? Yes. Do you need all this information in your own collection list? Absolutely not. And again, I'm used to dealing with a lot of data and stuff from my job. So building the spreadsheet actually wasn't that big a deal for me. It took a lot of time, but it also kind of came relatively naturally to build it and keep up with it that way. But it does. It comes in handy for me in a lot of cases. And so that's what I use. And I think we have nerded out more than long enough on this one. So let's bring this video to a close and let's talk metal in the comments down below. So going back to the topics at the top of the video, do you feel a lot of people are just showing off their collection, flexing, trying to, be like, I'm the alpha male in the collecting world. You little beta cucks can go do something else. I don't run into many people I feel really go that far with it, but there probably are some. And what do you think about Aaron's takes on the best collection? Do you think you're building your best collection? Are you collecting in a different manner? If so, that's fine. Some people really do just want to be completists about certain things. They may not like the albums and some of the albums by this band, but they still want to have everything by the band. That's okay. We've talked about those kind of topics in other videos. But are you happy with the way you're building your collection? Do you think it's the best it can be? Is there still some big piece of the puzzle that you're working on? And how do you manage your collection? Do you use Discogs? I know a ton of people do, and it's great. It's again a very nice, very powerful tool. It can do a lot of things that I don't do well on my spreadsheet. Like I said, I'm just real leery of putting all my data onto a website controlled by other entities that I have no say over whatsoever. I'd feel horrible if that information was someday put behind a paywall, or if the site just goes under. Discogs has had its problems in recent months. Bandcamp has had its problems in recent months. Those platforms don't necessarily last forever. Anything I buy from Bandcamp, I download it the moment I buy it. And I'm happy playing a lot of the music through Bandcamp a lot of the time. But if something happens and Bandcamp shuts down, I want to make sure I've got access to the stuff I paid for. All right. That is it for this collection. Oh, I guess I did kind of forget one thing. I said I was rapidly approaching 5,000 items in the collection. How did I know that? Going back to the spreadsheet, well, I could just count the rows, of course, and see that I'm which row I'm on. But I do have a counter over here. Let's see, let's share screen one last time. And see which tab. It's on one of the other tabs, which is why I forgot about it at first. There's a tab for, let's see if this is going to work. I can get all the little share screen icons out of the way here. Again, a little hard to see on the split screen. But yeah, over here on the keys tab, collection size. This shows size of collection, how it's changed over time. But yeah, right now total is 4,995. So we're about 5 away. I currently have 3 records pre-ordered, I believe. No, actually, I think I have 5 coming in the mail. Come think, I've got 2 singles, 2 albums, and 1 CD. So yes, I have 5 things due in the mail. When those 5 arrive, my collection will have gotten to 5,000 titles, which is the first time it has ever gotten that big. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. If anything, it might be a slightly bad thing. I am already kind of thinking in the back of my mind that during the upcoming holiday season, one of the things I'm going to do once I've got the semester wrapped up, I've gotten family stuff done, probably about time to go through some of the racks back there and start culling out some of the titles that have been piling up that just didn't make a good impression, that I feel like I'm not going to listen to. Some of that stuff will go to the record store, trade it in. Some of it'll be sold. Some of it'll probably go into some VCLT packages as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to hit 5,000 items for the first time ever. But I know there's some stuff starting to clutter up the shelves a little bit. So check back in a few months. That probably be back below 5,000. All right, this time we will end the video for real. Hope everyone is doing well. And until next time, keep banging your head.